Hey everyone, this is Alex or Frezza with Underground TCG. I just wanted to go over the deck choice that I chose for my locals last weekend. It went undefeated. I chose to do a purple variant, the Lilithmon. I guess you can call it the Lilith Loop, but it's a little bit different from that. So I'm just going to go over the deck choices that I made and why I chose them. So we'll start with the Digitama. A little bit different from the standard that most decks choose. Generally, the purple decks choose to go 4-1 with the Demi-Mirror into Jaman. But this list in particular kind of lacks the ability to discard or destroy like the higher level Digimon. So I chose to do the Jaman. This deck does get a lot of cards into the discard pile fairly quickly, so you do get to that 10 card minimum to get you into the retaliation phase. So generally, if you just start off with one Demi-Mirror, it allows you to feel your deck enough where you can go into your retaliation phase and kind of get your deck flowing all on its own. For rookies, I have, I would say pretty standard, a little bit different, but I do the 4 Gabu. This should be a staple in all purple decks. It's incredible. The draw 2 cards is just, isn't really another card like that as a rookie. Tappermon, another card that should be a staple. There's those 2 cards coming out of the raising area, turn 2, just you feel really good about. And unlike other decks, in my particular list, I prefer just to use Vanilla's 2-drop. This just gives you a lot more playability with what you do, rather than having to do, like turn 1 when you're dropping a 3-drop. I know a lot of purple decks have switched over to the Labramon rookie, where you get to draw 1, discard 1. But I'm pretty stingy on my first couple turns where I don't really like to give my opponent a lot of memory. And just having a 2-cost drop allows you to have a lot more playability early game to mid game, where you can do a 2-drop into a 1 Evo level 4 and potentially into a level 5. So you get a lot more playability, a lot more options, and it gives you a lot more draw power. So these in a 14 count, I think is pretty standard with this list. For the level 4s, again, pretty similar, just a little bit different. I chose to go with a heavy blocker package and only 2 of the Retaliation Devimon. This list is kind of a mid to late game deck where the longer the game lasts, the stronger this deck becomes. So things I want to do is I kind of want to stall the opponent and get my cards into my discard pile, activate all the effects of my stronger cards and my tamers, so that I can start doing all the combos in this deck. So blockers give me the chance to, buy myself a little bit more time. In addition to, Rookie Rush is a pretty tough list to play against with this deck. So having a heavy blocker count kind of helps that matchup. And then again, if you're playing purple, you kind of have to play the Devimon Retaliation. If your opponent gets into a really, really quick match or like a quick setup, the Devimon is really good to have to counter that. And you'll notice that the level 4 count is kind of low as opposed to a standard list. This one only runs 11. But that's because the level 5s kind of function on their own. So in this package, we play 4 Cerberus Werewolf mode and 4 Cerberus Mom. This combo was just something that was too cool not to try to build a deck around when BT4 came out. The draw 2, discard 1, being able to attack and then trash this card to get some draw power, increasing the consistency of the deck into another attacker. It's just a crazy combo. It's like a Rookie Rush variant, except you're doing it with level 5s. So while you're stalling and you're kind of setting up your deck with your blockers, you can, stall for a turn, maybe prevent your opponent from attacking, and then you can evolve into a Cerberus Mon, maybe get cheeky and steal a security. And then you can do the combo where, discard the Cerberus, draw 2 cards, discard 1, into the werewolf mode and attack an additional security. So you're essentially getting a 2-for-1. And the best combo of this deck that you would want of this particular list is like turn 1 into a Demi-Mirror, evolve into a Gabumon, and then if you can leave your opponent at 1 with the Devi, that's kind of like the perfect start. And then if next turn you want to bring him active, you can either choose to leave him as a blocker if you want, depending on your opponent's side, or you can just evolve into the Cerberus. If your opponent leaves you with 2, you choke them back at 1, or even if they put you to 1 their turn, you're just leaving them with 2 memory. And in this combo, you already have like your deck kind of getting ready to explode on your opponent. Because the very next turn, you're either going to swing into your opponent's security, depending on the matchup. If it's a rookie rush, you can pretty easily swing into security without any worry. And then you can do the Cerberus Werewolf Mode combo, where you're discarding this card or this stack and bringing this guy active. So essentially, you're drawing 2 cards from the Cerberus, discarding 1, 2 cards from the Goblimon, discarding 1, and then 1 from the Demi, discarding 1. So you're getting like a 5-card draw while discarding 3, so it's a net gain of 2. And you're filling up your discard pile with the 2 cards you discarded plus the 4 from the stack. So on turn 3, you have 6 cards in your discard pile. So that combo kind of fuels itself. And if that ever happens, if you do get that combo, then you're kind of set for the rest of the game. You know, if you're already drawn enough cards, the deck kind of fuels itself. It's as consistent as possible. I try to take out all of the, the cards that are cool to play in purple, but are generally inconsistent. And for level 6s, we have my girl, Lilithmon. I chose to only do 3 lilies because, again, this deck is kind of late game, mid to late game. So early game, having a Lilithmon in your hand is it's not a good sight to see. So things that we want to avoid early game is having our level 6s. We want to have as much options as we can to draw and discard. One of the really good things about this list for people in particular, like reasons why I didn't choose to play a card like Impmon that discards a lot of cards for you, kind of sets up your discard pile, is this list gets to control your hand. So you're only discarding cards that you want. You get to save all the cards that you want in your hand. So you can have a potential 5-card combo in your hand. You can save it as long as you want. So generally, if you get 1 or 2 Lilithmons down, you probably have enough in your hand for game. You have enough memory to kind of manipulate to drop as many Cerberus Mons as you want, go into the werewolf mode, draw extra cards, and kind of keep swinging away your opponent's security without any fear of a blocker. And then one of my personal favorite cards in purple is Piedmon. This card will save you mid-game, can kind of take a game away from your opponent late game just by dropping him down. Again, like I said, this deck needs to set up a lot in order to get the combos rolling. So being able to drop a Piedmon at any point in the game and bring 2 blockers onto the field is kind of, it's like an option that most decks don't really have. A lot of rookie rush decks get to use the Puppetmon to kind of stall for a turn or 2, where purple gets Piedmon. So this card is really great. And while you're putting blockers in your field, the very next turn, if your opponent, you're kind of forcing your opponent to deal with your field, right? Because you're dropping down 2 blockers in addition to a retaliation Digimon. But if they don't do it, you can evolve your blocker into a level 5 Cerberus, and then you can continue your combo again. So it kind of fuels the setup of your deck, and it kind of all, everything in this deck kind of works together. And then the last card is, if they don't choose to kill your retaliation Piedmon, he can easily turn into a Millenniummon. So this card is super underrated. I think it's one of the best level 7s out there. You can tuck away anything. Tuck away a Valderon, they don't get any effects. While tucking away a card, he sticks on the field. This card is really sticky. You can kind of freely swing away at your security without the fear of, getting discarded. All right, so moving into the items that I play. I play the staple for this deck, which is the 4 Jack Reed. Kind of, explains itself. This deck revolves around getting a lot of memory back, looping the cards like Jack Reed, looping all of your item cards, using Lilithmon to kind of give you as much memory as you need to have your combos perform itself and kind of steal away games from your opponent. Place 3 of the Necro. Card gets back your Cerberus Mons in the discard pile. So it's kind of waiting for a card to come out in BT4 that can kind of utilize this one better. So Lilithmon can also pull these back. Lilithmon reduces the cost of it to 3. So if you have a Mat Down or a Memory Tamer, you kind of have a free turn to drop a Necro into a Cerberus that can potentially turn into a Werewolf mode to get your draw power going. Or you can either just Necro into the Werewolf mode and swing. There was a couple games where I just Necroed per game. Your opponent doesn't see it coming. You'll drop like a Jack Reed for 2, Necrophobia into Cerberus Werewolf mode, and just swing away at their security, and they can't really prevent it. And the last card is I chose to do 1 Deathclaw. The card is really, it's kind of broken for a 1-cost item. You're kind of just trashing your Tappermons or your vanilla rookies, kill a blocker. So you have to play a card like this. Lilithmon allows you to utilize more than 1. So if you get it in your discard pile, essentially, if you have 3, you have a 3 copy of this card. So the way I play this deck is essentially early game, I try to discard any of my items so that when I have a Lilithmon, I drop it down, I get to utilize her to her full effect by grabbing the items I discarded from my discard pile. Another reason I chose to play this card is Terriermon does exist, and Terriermon does kind of shut this deck down all on its own. So it prevents you from, gaining memory, everything except from Tamers. So having a Deathclaw candy is good to have. And lastly, I have my Tamers. I have Matt, and then I have my favorite Tamer from purple, which is Mimi. Mimi kind of brings this deck to another level, in my opinion, where some of the Lilithmon variants I see, they Lilithmon for Jack Reed, and the Jack Reed gives them 1 memory for what's in the discard pile plus 2 from the Lilithmon, so they get 3 memory, which is really, really good. But the Mimi, early game, if you're playing 4 Jack Reed, it's not a great card to see early game. But if you have a Mimi down turn 1, then the Jack Reed just kind of turns into a Hammer Spark. So it's good to have a Mimi early game, because not only does it help you, reducing the cost, making your Deathclaw free, reducing the cost of the Necros, potentially down to a 3 cost, and boosting up your Jack Reeds to, 4 or 5 or even 6 memory. Not only does Mimi help you, it can kind of disrupt your opponent as well, because the Hammer Sparks that your opponent are playing turn into a 0, right? Because they're gaining a memory, but they're losing the memory from Mimi. In addition to turning, cards like Blinding Ray, in addition to Hidden Potential in green. So all these free cards turn into a memory cost. So you can kind of disrupt your opponent, mess up their math calculations, and kind of steal a turn or 2 away from your opponent if you play this properly. The reason why I chose to play this list is my locals doesn't necessarily play a lot of yellow. There's a couple players that do play it, but not enough where I thought I had to avoid playing this deck. Yellow is a bad matchup because yellow can kind of clear your field, so it doesn't matter what you're doing, because yellow has the option to either go aggro early game, where they can just take all their prizes right away and have no really response in this deck for it, or they can just out recover you with their security. So it doesn't matter how many times they swing at their security, they can just recover it over and over. So if you have a locals that doesn't really play the meta, and they kind of just everybody's playing their own decks, it's a really, really fun deck to try out. It also has a pretty decent matchup against security. So a lot of people are choosing to play security nowadays. So this could be a nice, refreshing deck to play against those matchups. But feel free to drop a comment, ask a question on this deck list, anything in particular, any questions on any of the cards I chose to play, and I'll get back to you guys in the comments. But other than that, have a good one.